And we appreciate the Lord. Turn your Bibles to the book of Psalm, 25th Psalm. Thought on my mind. Lord's service this morning.
Amen.
And, enjoying Brother Sparks' teaching. The Revelation. There's a lot there that I've heard several preach on it, teach on it, and there's a lot that you just don't maybe that we never understand, we never know. But it's just good to listen and learn more on those things. And I've really enjoyed it. But the book of Psalm, chapter 25, start reading verse 1. It says, "Unto thee, O Lord, I lift up my soul. O my God, I trust in thee. Let me not be ashamed. Let not mine enemies triumph over me. Yea, let none that wait on thee be ashamed. Let them be ashamed that transgress without cause." Verse 4 says, "Show me thy ways, O Lord, and teach me thy paths. Lead me in thy truth, and teach me, for thou art the God of my salvation. On thee do I wait all the day. Remember, O Lord, thy tender mercies and thy loving kindness, for they have been ever old. Remember not the sins of my youth, nor my transgressions. According to thy mercy, remember thou me for thy goodness' sake, O Lord. Good and upright is the Lord, therefore will he teach sinners in the way. The meek will he guide in judgment, and the meek will he teach his way. All the paths of the Lord are mercy and truth unto such, and keep his covenant and his testimonies." Thank you for standing for the reading. I thought as I read this, as David begins to pray to the Lord and begins to think of his trespasses and his sins and his faults and his failures, I thought, and when we do that, we can look upon a vast of problems that we've all had. And David, as we know the story of David and the desire that he had, but yet we know that the things that he allowed to happen to him, and the reproach, if you would, that was brought upon him because of his sin. And then he prays to the Lord, and in verse 4 he says, "Show me thy ways, O Lord, and teach me thy paths." And I thought the thought that I've got on my mind tonight is simply, teach me. And I think it was Wednesday night when I was preaching. I was talking about, or maybe Sunday, I don't remember exactly when I did say it, but about being a teacher. And that's something that I'm not good at, Brother Bill, is teaching someone. Because whenever I've got something that needs to be done, I'd rather do it than have to take the time to teach someone. I just don't have the patience to be a teacher. And I thought I can remember back in school, I never did like school. I went because I had to. Brother Greg was talking about trying to keep the C average. I done the best. And with Pawpaw, he was always easier on us. And D's were dandy and the F's was fantastic. And that's what he always told us. But Dad had a different outlook on that. But I had some teachers that were good teachers. And I learned a lot from them. And then I had some teachers that were not so good. I believe it was my 5th grade teacher I had, and he'd only been teaching a couple years, and I couldn't, other than all the whippings I got for the bad grades, it's all I remember about 5th grade, because I didn't learn nothing. And because of the teacher that I had. But I thought when I began to think about God, and begin to think about his ability, and if we were willing to follow after him, he will teach us his ways. And we've heard others testify. And Sister Kathy, she's got a testimony of how that when she she's been took to church all her life, and she prayed through one night, got the Holy Ghost, and how the Holy Ghost began to teach teach her and lead her into the ways of God. And I was listening this morning before we came to church. We listened to Brother Dwayne Gallagher, and I believe I could listen to the man all day. And he was preaching and talking about some holiness matters, and how that the world, and how that it's just got so messed up, and the abominations that's going on in the world, and I thought that we began to teach about some holiness matters, and a lot of things that he taught on is just common sense, and that we ought to know those things, but a lot of the Holy Ghost will begin to teach us. Right. I guess the thing that got me thinking about this, yesterday I had my son David's Suburban back at the barn/garage, whatever you want to call it, and he busted the brake lines in it, and he a couple years or a year or so ago, we put a motor in it, and he busted a brake line in the front, and I patched it up, and I told him, I said, it ain't gonna be long, we're going to replace every brake line on this thing, and he sold it, and man, I was glad when he sold it. And then lo and behold, about a month or so ago, he turned around and bought it back. And I told Sister Kathy when he bought it, I said, well, there's a job for me, because I'm going to have to replace the brake lines on that. And so sure enough, he busted them, and now here it is. But I was back there working on them yesterday, and I'm not no real good at that stuff, and you'll never put them back the way they came out. But I got the brake line, and I bring it out, and I had my flaring tool in the vise, and I was putting it in there, and I was flaring them, and putting my fittings on, and then I'd go out and measure another brake line, and just doing it over and over. But Colin was there with me, and he began to watch me. And he said, Papa, I'm going to have to learn how to do this, so that when you get too old, I can work on my daddy stuff. And he said, but once you teach me how to do it, he said, I'm going to teach him how, so that he'll know how to do it himself. And I said, well, good luck with that, because I've been trying to teach him for 30 years, and I haven't taught him nothing. The first truck he ever had, we bought it, and it was sitting in a field, and the window busted out of it, and the motor blowed up, and we brought it down there, and it was supposed to be a father-son project, and I done all the work while he was on the phone texting it. But we got it running, and I thought, but I just could not teach him, because he did not want to learn.
Come on now.
He did not care about it. I mean, he likes cars, and he likes to trade, and he likes to drive them, but when he comes to working on them, he does not want to learn. And I thought, but Colin is taking interest in it. And I thought, we got that old 66 Chevrolet back there, and he'll get back there, and he'll help me work on it, and do everything within his ability, and he don't want me working on it without him. And but it's just there's a difference there. He had a desire to learn.
Yes, sir.
And I thought, that's the way it is when it comes to learning the things of God. We've got to have a desire to want to learn what thus saith the word of the Lord. I thought, Sister Kathy, she's got that testimony. There's a lot of people that she went to church with at that time, Brother Bill, that prayed through about the same time she did. But they didn't have a desire to allow the Holy Ghost to teach them the way she wanted him to teach her. And although their lives have corresponded with that, you can see the vast difference. And a lot of them have veered away from what they established then. And the ways of holiness that they had worked up to, they moved away from those. And I thought, because we've got to allow the Lord to teach us.
Right.
David said, show me thy ways, O Lord, and teach me thy paths. Yes. When he said, show me, then he simply meant to set an example for me to follow.
Come on. Yes.
I thought when Colin yesterday, he wanted to learn how to do that. And so he stood there and he watched me make a flare. And so I went out there and I climbed under the truck and I began to run that brake line. It was the first one that went back to the back wheels. It took me a while, and I had a bunch of old brake line laying there on the workbench, and I came back in, and he had one on there, and he had done a pretty good job flaring. And he got a little offside, so I done the next one, and I said, now watch me. And he sat there, and he watched me, and I began to show him how to put it in there, and how to put the gap in it, and all the things that had to be done. And I went and put that brake line on, and he got another old piece of brake line. He stuck it in there, and I came back in, and he had done just a little bit better. And by the time I got through running about 5 brake lines, and he'd done another one, he just about had them just flared as good as I did, Brother Bill, because I took time and I began to show him. He had a desire to learn. He wanted me to teach him. I'm talking about a 7-year-old boy. And I thought, but how much greater can we learn from God if we would just simply allow Him to show us and teach us?
Yeah. Right.
Lord, allow me to slow down enough that you can show me.
Yeah.
You know, a lot of things. I thought a couple of weeks ago, during all this thing, and we've got 2 big automatic slicers we slice tenderloin with, but most of the time we just run one of them. And but during all this, if you don't run both of them, then you're done way behind. And we brought a young man in there, and then I began to show him and teach him, and you know, and then which pay ain't the greatest. And I told him, I said, if you learn this, then we'll try our best to get you on full time and get you a little more money. And he was doing pretty good. But every day I had to go back and teach him the same things over and over. The guy that's running the slicer beside him, he'd been there for a while, and he can run them things and keep them clacking right on, and just about run both of them by himself if he really wanted to. But he would come over and he would show him, and he told me, he said, I've got to show him the same stuff every day. He got discouraged and he quit. We hired another feller, and last week, and he came in, and the first day we showed him, and the second day he came in, we showed him how to set the machine up, put it together, and by Friday, I mean, he had that thing clicking, and it was running good. But Harold told me the second day he was there, he said, this boy will learn because he'll stand still and listen to what I'm telling him. And I thought that's the problem with a lot of times. The reason we're not learning what God wants is, He's trying to show us, but we're not standing still. We're not listening to what the Lord is teaching us.
Right.
And I thought in order to learn, you've got to teach. Yeah, you've got to listen. That's one reason I had a problem in school. I never did want to listen. I was sitting there in school, and I would daydream about what was going on whenever I got out of school. I know they were talking about the pandemic and all the things going on, and with all the school systems getting ready to start back. And I think Madison County's got like 3 options. They can do homeschool without much interaction with the teacher. Then I think they've got some kind of virtual thing where they get online and they let the teacher teach them. And then they can go to school, sit in the classroom, and be all segregated and spread apart with their mask on, and be there where the teacher could teach them. And Colin told us the other day, he said, I think I want to go to school. And he told me, he said, because whenever I'm at home, I'd rather be outside riding my dirt bike. Because he knows if he's at home, then he's going to have a difficult applying himself to be taught. Because if he's home, and I thought that's the way I was. If I was sitting in school, I was thinking about when I got home what I was going to do and all this. And I thought, because of that, we have a hard time learning because we're thinking of what we're wanting out of it instead of what God wants. Right. And I thought when it comes to serving God, when it starts out, it's not what we want. But if you realize, Brother Greg, the more and more we learn from God, the closer and closer we get from God, we realize what we're wanting is more or less what God's wanting.
That's it.
And I've said before, God, everybody says, well, God will give you desires of your heart if you love Him. And I thought because when you draw close to God, you begin to love God, you realize that the desires of your heart are the things God wants out of your life. And not what you're wanting. And what we've got to learn to allow God to teach us. And then He said, teach me. Give me instruction that I may obtain knowledge. And I thought, said it's one thing to show someone something and then begin to teach them. Oh, listen, I think this morning, and I like to fish, and I get on YouTube and I like to watch those pro fishermen and learn some of their techniques and how they like to jerk those jerk baits and all that. But I was listening to one this morning, and there's a guy from Japan. I don't remember his name. Could pronounce it if I did. But he came over here, I believe he said 20 years ago, or back in 97. And that's when it was. Back in 97 he came over here. And he spent some time over here fishing. And he said when he came over here, he didn't speak English and didn't have no money, and he had no boat and an old truck, and they was broke down more. And so he got on there as what they call a co-angler, and he began to fish with some of those guys. But he went back to Japan, and he stayed over there, and he worked, and he saved up $200,000, and that's a lot of money. And he came back over here to fish, and he's going to stay over here and fish till the $200,000 is gone, and he's going back to Japan. But it was about the end of all that, and he's getting ready to go back. But they was talking to him about his English, and he spoke pretty good English. And he said, well, I learned myself how to speak English by watching movies with subtitles. He said, I'd watch the movie, and I'd have the subtitles up in the Japanese language. And he said, then I would watch the movie, and I'd put the subtitles up in the English language. And I taught myself how to speak English. Now, I had hard trouble with English, and I've been raised in the United States all my life. And so if it weren't for English and arithmetic, I'd had a high school diploma. Those two messed me up. But anyway, I listened to that, and I thought that was a man that had a desire to learn, to be able to teach himself. I thought Kenley is just 4-year-old, and there's little things that she likes to listen to, and they like to do Spanish language, and there's a lot of things that she can say in Spanish. And she's just a child. And because it's easy for her to be taught. Her mind is at that age where she's teachable, if you would. Yeah. And I thought the problem with a lot of us is we get past the place where we think we're teachable. Right. But David had humbled himself down and he said, teach me thy ways. Teach me, Lord. And I thought we've got to humble ourselves down in order for God to teach us. That's right. I thought that's why I love Sunday school. And I thought I've always been raised, when I was real little, we didn't go to Sunday school, but I don't know, back in the late 70s, early 80s, we began to go to church where they had Sunday school. And Dad got us up every Sunday morning, we went to Sunday school, and he taught us. And I don't know everything, but I know how to find my way around in the Bible. Because they tell us to turn to this. And Sister Kathy teaches a teenage class, and she has for several years. And she'll come home sometimes and she'll say, it's so sad whenever you have a teenager come into the Sunday school room and you ask them to turn over to something in the Bible, and they don't know whether it's in the New Testament or the Old Testament. They don't know who, some of them don't even know who Moses is. They don't even know who Jonah was. And stuff that our little kids have took for granted, and they've learned from the preschool all the way up. And because they've not been taught. Right. And I thought when you get someone that way, and once they get older, it's so hard to begin to teach them the Word of God. Right. Because they get a mindset that it's not necessary. That I don't need that. If it's something I needed, Mom and Dad would have took me a long time ago. And I thought, but we got to get to work ourselves down where we can be taught.
That's right. Yes, that's right.
Then in the last part of verse 4, he said, teach me thy ways, O Lord, and teach me thy paths. What he was saying by teach me thy paths, he was saying, lead me. If you're following after someone's path, that's right, then you're allowing them to lead you. That's right. And I thought, he was saying, go before me, Lord, and show me the ways you want me to go. And I thought, the Lord will do that. He will lead us into the ways that He wants us to go. God's ways are not the ways of man. I mean, when you begin to think about the ways of man, it's completely contrary to the ways of God. We look at the things that's going on around us, and the things that's been taught in our schools, and our children are having to be subject to. And I thought it's almost an abomination to have to send your kids to some of the schools and with some of the stuff that's going on. Because, but David said, teach me thy ways, God. And God's ways, Jeremiah chapter 6 and verse 16 says, thus saith the Lord, stand ye in the ways, and see and ask for the old paths, where is the good way, and walk therein, and ye shall find rest for your souls. But they said, we will not walk therein. That's right. Although we've got a multitude of people that are refusing to walk after the ways of God.
That's right.
People that know the way of God, but are simply refusing. I thought, it's I've got a guy that I'm somewhat kin to, and maybe a little extended, and he knows the ways of God. And sometimes you can talk to him, and he wants to talk churchy. And he knows just enough, Brother Ronnie, that I guess you could say those things knows just enough to be dangerous. Yeah. And he can talk churchy with the best of them. But then there's some times that he'll want to go out and he'll want to get drunk, and he want to get wild and have the big parties and all that stuff. And he can get with that bunch, and he can talk just as good as they can. And I thought, because he can fit in with both crowds. But I thought that's not the ways of God. And I thought, if we're going to follow after the ways of God, we got to get in His paths and follow after His ways. The paths of God is not in sin, but a path of righteousness, a path that will lead us closer to Him. And I thought God's ways, and when He begins to teach us, He begins to teach us truth, the truth of God. John 17 says, sanctify them through thy truth, and thy word is truth.
That's right.
And I thought God's word is always true. And I thought we can find, if we just simply follow after that and allow Him to teach us.
Right.
And I thought, I want to be teachable. Like I said, when I was younger, sometimes I wasn't very teachable, unless it was something I wanted to learn. Right? Then I was willing to learn. I thought, whenever it comes to the things of God, whenever it first, especially when it comes to holiness, a lot of times we don't want to be taught. Brother Sparks has made mention several times of the man that he's working with, and he began to talk about some things in church with his giving and different things like that. And the man told me, he just simply said, shut up, don't tell me no more. If you tell me any more, I'll be required of it. It'll be required of me. Whenever he refused to hear the truth, Brother Ronnie was required of him.
Yeah.
Already required of him. So whenever it comes down to the fact, then you just sit and say, Lord, just teach me. Teach me a little more.
That's right.
There's a lot of times that it really went against the grain. But I would begin to say, Lord, teach me.
Yeah.
Show me thy ways. Show me thy paths. Lord.
Yeah.
Show me the path that you want me to walk in. I remember being a kid, and over at Regis Road where Papa and Granny lived, there's a big pine thicket. The boys got up in there with axes and hatchets and a little bit of everything else, and whatever we could come up with to cut. We had paths all through those hills, all through those pine thickets. We could ride a bicycle all over them hillsides. And I thought, right before Papa and them sowed all that, Roger and Wayne and a bunch of them got in there with saws, and they cut all those pines down and just left them lay there to rot. All those paths were gone. Drove by there, he'll walk back, and that hillside grow back up. You can't tell one place where we had a path.
Right.
Because nobody was traveling it. Nobody used them no more.
Come on.
And I thought, but when we get on the paths of God, we'll begin to travel. After a while, somebody's going to realize the path we're on.
Come on.
They're going to start
That's
traveling.
right.
They're going to start following it. And I thought eventually we're going to find that because we're willing to follow God, others will begin to follow us. And we can lead them to the ways of God. I appreciate the Lord tonight.
Yes.
I hope it helped you.
Yes.
I thought this is all I had on my mind.
Good preaching. Good preaching.
I thought-
Good preaching.
David said, teach me thy ways, O Lord. Teach me. I want the Lord to teach me. I don't ever want to be too old to learn. I thought I first started working off of Charlie's, took the position I got. Mr. Parsons was he was a hard guy to work for, but he was a fair guy because he expected the same thing of everybody. I mean, he wanted everybody to do the same. I mean, that's just the way it was. He expected everybody to work. And but he was a teacher, and he went to college, and he was a professor of agriculture. And if anybody knew the cattle, the beef industry, he knew it. And he didn't necessarily study the pork industry, but he was good with it. And I thought, and there's a lot of things that he taught me that and a lot of it, I've said before, which he ended up getting Alzheimer's, and a lot of these stories that came around the kitchens and about wear us out. But there was a lot of times that he'd come in and I've made mention of my papa. A lot of times he'd tell us the same stories over and over. Brother Sparks is amazing, and because he wanted us to get it. And Mr. Parsons was the same way when he'd tell me those same stories over and over and over. And I look back now and I realize how much he taught me. And there was a lot of times I got aggravated at him, and I thought, man, this old man drives me crazy. But I realized how much I learned by working under him. And then after he was gone, and his son took over, and his son was a good guy to work for, but he was not like his dad. And but I thought, but I said all that to say, I had to be willing to sit there. And a lot of times I'd go in his office at 8 o'clock, and every morning at 8 o'clock I had to go in there. Sometimes I'd sit there for an hour and meet with work out there, and he'd be done, and I'm sitting there just squirming in my chair, and and wanting to get back to work, and I'd sit there and I'd listen to him, and he'd begin to tell me this, and I learned from that. And I thought, a lot of times we've got to be willing to just stop. No matter what's going on,
That's right.
it's important to stop and allow ourselves to be taught by God. Oh, Lord, teach me thy ways. Draw me closer to you, and I'll do the things that you would have me to do. Does that get us a song? Let's come and pray. Maybe somebody else got something to say after a while. I don't know, it's too early. It's just about 5 minutes after 7. But I thought, teach me, Lord. Teach me thy ways. Does that get us a song? Let's pray.
Come on forward with the altar, saints. Come right on in. Hallelujah. Praise the Lord, praise the Lord, praise the Lord. Thank you, Jesus. Thank you, Jesus. Thank you, Jesus. Oh, God, when we're in our peace. Oh, Lord, when we get in the condition. When we get in the condition that we know, and yet we go ahead and override what we know. Lord, thank you. We put ourselves into today. You're a mighty big God today. You're a mighty big God. I praise you, Lord, today.